When talking about AI technologies, I mean, you talked about the fact that there's so many being used in so many different ways. Can you drill down on an example of a really cool AI application that you've been helping somebody with that maybe the listeners haven't heard of anything like this before?
Well, one of my favorite examples, and we have this as a case study in our state of AI in the enterprise survey, is a company called Recursion Pharma. And what they do is they're tackling some of today's most tricky health problems. So looking at cancer treatments, heart disease, lung disease, and things like that. And what they've done is they've built a platform. They basically they know that they're going to be running hundreds of clinical trials around potential medicines at any given time. And these trials are complicated, they're expensive. If they go well, really great medicines can go out the door and help patients. If they don't go well, then that disease continues to be a problem with things. And then there's the business, the profitability requirement around, we make big investments, we need to get the returns. And so what Recursion has done is worked out that they can use artificial intelligence, so image recognition, to determine if a cell is healthy or not. So if human cells are healthy or not. And so what they're doing is they're taking massive amounts of data from all of the various trials that they're running. And they've got a database of 5 million images of human cells. And what they're able to do is use machine learning to determine the results of the different trials, the cells that are being tested. Are they seeing positive outcomes or negative outcomes? And basically bringing that together and summarizing that. So on a much more rapid basis, on a much more economical, so saving millions of dollars on an annual basis, they can run these trials in a way that is relatively automated. It's very intelligent, and I think it's just one of the best examples of the practical applications of artificial intelligence that I've seen today.
Hopefully, they're working on COVID-19.
I don't know if they are, but actually more broadly. So in the industry, the various pharmaceutical companies that are working on treatments and vaccines absolutely are using artificial intelligence. And basically, you would not be able, if you look at what the news is reporting around the results of potential treatments and vaccines, the timelines that are being considered would not be able, you would not be able to develop those treatments in a time frame like what we're seeing if you did not have artificial intelligence and cloud. Like so the ability to really crunch the data in an expansive way at a relatively low cost with the deep learning and the machine learning and the computer vision and the artificial intelligence tools to be able to assess that automatically. You just wouldn't be able to do that. And so I actually think if you step out of the quite negative pandemic situation that we're in and you look ahead to some of the more chronic diseases we've had in the past, and cancer and the like, I'm actually quite excited about the potential of applying technology to those problems. And also more broadly, like my colleagues, it's always really fun to see an engagement where you're tackling a topic like this that is really going to do some societal good and is really going to help people. So I think that that's a real win-win from a business perspective, but also from a human outcomes perspective.
No, that's wonderfully encouraging. It is amazing when you look at the situation, and we do have this real crisis around the world with terrible impacts. But just think if this had happened before the internet. Think if we didn't have the internet. Think if we didn't have video calls, and also obviously with some of these cure and vaccine issues, the ability to do something perhaps twice as fast. A lot. I mean, I think part of it is, it takes about, I think it still takes about 10 years to develop a molecule into an approved drug, by the FDA.
Yeah.
But with machine learning, you can find other drugs that are already approved for one thing that actually might have an impact on something else. And that would have been absolutely impossible to do in 3 months,
Yeah, and it may have attributes that, while it isn't 100% the answer, it may have attributes that are 50% the answer. So you effectively start with a significant head start and you're able to more rapidly do this. And then also, as technologies become more prolific and globalized, you have many more geographies, many more types of organizations. So if you think about the current situation, you have governmental organizations, you have commercial pharma, you have a lot of different companies that are working on this. And without the pervasiveness of technology, you just wouldn't be able to do it. I mean, it would be like 1918 and the pandemic situation that you had there, where you just have to kind of push through it at great cost to human life and health, or you'd have to completely shut your economy down, which that's a dramatic impact as well.
I know, I know. You've mentioned Snowflake a couple of times in our conversation today, and I want to get back to that now. When did Deloitte start working closely with Snowflake? What are the kind of the initial engagements, and how is it developed?
So we've been working with Snowflake for well over a year, and we're really excited about the partnership and what we see with Snowflake. We love the innovation and the fact that here is a data platform that's born in the cloud, but it's also multi-cloud. So it sits on top of the largest provider's infrastructure, and it's got some, in terms of the performance and the query speed, the really smart way that there's the per second metered pricing, the fact that there's so many native integrations, some big announcements that were made several weeks ago, and we see in the business intelligence area and artificial intelligence area, you know announcements and things that are happening, partnerships where, and in fact, Snowflake's recently moved its positioning from cloud data warehouse to cloud data
Right.
platform. And we really like that because we know that it alludes to Snowflake becoming a more pervasive capability. This is why I'm personally excited with my artificial intelligence role, because in order to enable the artificial intelligence, you've got to have the data modernized. And in fact, over 60% of the people that we surveyed around the state of artificial intelligence said that I've got an issue with data and that's preventing me from adopting AI. And so, with Snowflake, you can get the data out of the silos. The query speed is really, really fast. And so you can use it for things that have almost real-time requirements, or where some of these data sets that we're talking about, there's really expansive data sets, but you don't need to be working with them on an ongoing basis. You have like a particular problem that you need to solve, so you can run it and then you can shut it down. And we really like that flexibility. And so, we think that Snowflake is going to be one of our top partners as an artificial intelligence enabler, and also as an important part of cloud modernizations and migrations that our clients are doing and need help with. And so we think that that's going to be the basis for quite a lot of growth. And the projects that we're doing right now, they tend to be focused in the life sciences, healthcare, and the technology and the banking sectors, where these organizations have a lot of data, and they tend to be stuck, or not stuck, but they tend to reside in legacy databases that are now quite aged. They're 12, 15, 18 years old, and they're on-prem, they're not as flexible, and very high maintenance costs with that, because they tend to be oriented towards a hardware application and things. And so we really like the fact that in these business sectors, which are really high priority for us, that's where a lot of our clients are at, there's the ability to move this data, to modernize the capability, and then to enable the transformation that we talked about earlier around artificial intelligence and other things. And so the projects that we're doing right now are mostly helping our clients to do that modernization, move that data out of an old world into a new cloud-enabled world. And we're really excited about then what happens next with, basically being able to enable customer data platforms, artificial intelligence capabilities, and really help our clients become more sophisticated about how they use their data.
So what does Snowflake Cloud Data Platform enable your clients to do that they couldn't do or couldn't do as well previously?
Well, it's basically being able to take large volumes of data and get them out of silos in the organization, but at a relatively low cost. So, so the clients that are adopting Snowflake and are modernizing, they've moved to the cloud. And so the storage and the compute capability is separate. So you're already paying for that in the cloud provider. You don't pay for that again with Snowflake. And so what the clients are able to do once they migrate across to Snowflake is to run really big, expansive queries that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do with the constraints of their previous system. But again, like only run it when they need to. So if you're looking at assessing clinical trial data for a cancer treatment, you don't have to run that every hour. You need to run an assessment and then feed that back into the trial and things. And so Snowflake gives you the ability to do that, a massive data set with very flexible pricing. And then the integrations into the business intelligence, the artificial intelligence tools really give it a lot of flexibility and richness around the analysis that can be done after you've run that and you have that data.
Hey, what about the data sharing capability, either within an organization or between, within an ecosystem? Is that something that's really kind of unique to these kinds of cloud data platforms, or?
It is unique, and it's fairly early stages. They say that data is the new oil in the economy, and so what we're looking at is how data is going to be shared, and particularly some of these ecosystems that we've talked about, and we've tended, I think, to anchor on life sciences, healthcare in this conversation. But if you're a governmental or quasi-governmental research institution, academia, and then commercial companies and things, being able to share that data back and forth, particularly around like really complicated and difficult topics, is really, really important. So being able to do that at speed and flexibility and low cost is something that's really important. And we think that Snowflake's having that ability to do that is a real differentiator. How that evolves in an ecosystem standpoint, how you govern that, who owns the data in that circumstance, these are things that are quite difficult and being worked out. But the underlying capability is there, and we think that that's a really unique feature of Snowflake.
Hey, I do a lot of reading of LinkedIn profiles before these podcasts, and I noticed that two things. You have an interest in environmentalism, and also I noticed that you spent a lot of time in Australia before you came back to America here. Now, Australia, obviously on the front lines of climate change, the fires, the droughts, all that kind of stuff. Do you see a potential for AI to help out slowing or adapting to climate change?
Yeah, and I think it's probably more broadly some of the scientific topics in the future that we're going to have to deal with. Absolutely. And I think, too, that the more you can get data driven, so we've seen this in companies and in business, the more you can align on a single source of truth and focus on the facts and the data, the more effective you can be in addressing a situation. Right. And so if I look at, even improvements in agriculture, you think about the innovations that we talked about earlier around image recognition. Also, there are now very high resolution satellites that just ring the earth. So you have access to a lot of very good visual data, geospatial data, climate, heat, water, the different migration patterns and things in animals and populations. So what we're able to do right now, and what we'll be able to do in the future, is look at these patterns. And again, like being able to crunch enormous amounts of data, like weather data is unbelievably intensive. So being able to have the systems and technologies to handle those kinds of use cases means that you will be able to better predict what potential fire, flood, even disease-related type patterns and topics will be. And you can break it down so that as you test what potential responses are, you can then more accurately predict what the likely outcome is. And so I think the more that you can apply data and science to some of the challenges that we have in the world, the more effective that you're going to be. And in some of the personal circumstances I've been in around conservation, that's what we've looked to do, is we've looked at images of what is happening to an environment. We've looked at readings around availability of water and trends and patterns over time to then be able to say, okay, well, if we have this type of outcome that we're looking to drive, what are the investments or interventions that we need to make? And so I see data and technologies being absolutely crucial to that.
I want to ask you to be a visionary for, right here near the end, if you
Okay.
would. Looking ahead, 5 years or
Mhm.
more, how do you see AI transforming business? Because you've done such a great job of kind of describing what's going on now, what the capabilities are now. But look
Mm.
ahead,
Yeah.
5 years, economy, even society. How could it be transformative?
So I think you've got two areas where it's going to matter most. One is efficiency, and the other is value add. And I think that people tend to jump in shadows around AI is going to be disruptive to employment and is going to take people's jobs. And actually, there were predictions about that in the 1950s that proved not to be true and things. And so, what I actually think is likely to happen is that a lot of the rote repetitive tasks are going to be automated away, and the result of the work will be as good as it currently is or better. And what it's actually going to do is free up people to do less repetitive, less rote work, and more creative, more satisfying work. And I think, as we transition from the Industrial Revolution, and people were working in mass in factories, and then you saw automation, you didn't actually see a net reduction in employment, but you didn't have people doing very rote and repetitive tasks anymore and things. And so I think one of the best, if I look ahead to 5 years, which isn't really that far out in the scheme of things, I think that that's going to be, a real impact. And then if you think about the capability that your phone has now that it didn't have 5 years ago, whether it's like mapping and location, or understanding you, communicating with it and serving up ideas, and like the photo capability and images. And so the value, and a lot of those capabilities are added for free,
Yeah.
whether it's entertainment, or that type of support for how you want to operate as a person. I think there's going to be a lot of value add that's going to come through. And I think that's probably the two biggest angles. I don't know that they'll be flying cars by then. They may be in trials, but I think fundamentally how people operate at work and in their personal life will be pretty dramatically impacted by AI. But I'm more of an optimist. I think that's going to be for the
Yeah,
better.
yeah. I hope you're right. Hey, this has been a great conversation, Frank. Really enjoyed talking to you. I found your description of Recursion Pharma, what they're doing with clinical
Yep.
trials and AI. I think that's really fascinating when you think about what they're doing, and then the other kinds of things that the pharma, the biotech industry could do. Or I mean, you look at healthcare and you just see
Yeah.
an industry that is ripe for transformation, and we need it. So I think that's just a wonderful example. And I'm going to go out and and read your State of AI in the Enterprise Survey. Now, is that something that anybody can download from the Deloitte?
Yeah, that's on
Okay.
Deloitte.com. There's some infographics, and there's a executive summary of that. So we could get that to you, but yeah, that's very publicly available.
I think a lot of the listeners are going to rush over there and get that, because I think that's just the kind of thing, I mean, it's something that business leaders and also technology leaders, I think they all want to know that stuff. They
That's
need to know
right.
the big
There's a
trends.
business and a technology
Yeah.
angle in there. It's written. You don't have to have a computer science degree in order to consume it and get value from it. So it's written for both business and technology. But we think that a lot of the public would
Yeah.
benefit.
No, that sounds great. Yeah, I think thought leadership. I mean, Deloitte has a reputation for thought leadership. I think it's well known. I think it burnishes the brand. I'm sure it helps with marketing, when you show
Yeah, yeah.
what you can do. But I think it's a brilliant thing for you guys to share it in this way.
It's the marketing that we like to
Yeah.
do. We like to have a point of view. It's important for our clients, and we need to be able to express it in a way that can be understood. And so that the vast majority of our marketing is focused on that, because we think
Yeah.
it's just that important for our clients.
Well, very cool. Well, thanks again so much for being on today. It's been fascinating talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
That does it for this episode of Rise of the Data Cloud. Thank you for listening. This episode is brought to you by Snowflake. To see how you can get secure and easy access to any data with near infinite scalability, visit snowflake.com.